The crystal chambers of the Villani High Council had never seen such chaos. Elder Kithara stood at the center of the circular room, her blue crystalline skin flickering with patterns of deep worry. Around her, dozens of other Villani leaders spoke. In rapid telepathic bursts, their thoughts creating a storm of fear and desperation that filled the air like static electricity. Scout Nexus had returned from the Outer Rim just hours ago, and his report still echoed in everyone's minds. The Ravager. Swarm was coming. The nightmare that had destroyed 3 civilizations in the far reaches of space was now heading directly toward Villani territory. Kithara raised her hand, and the telepathic chatter slowly died down. Her ancient voice carried the weight of 1,000 years of peaceful leadership. Tell us again what you saw, young Nexus. Leave nothing out. The young scout's crystalline features pulsed with orange fear patterns. His ship had been on a routine exploration mission to the Gamma sector when his sensors had detected something impossible. A fleet of organic ships, each one the size of a small moon, moving through space like a swarm of insects. They consumed everything in their path, stripping entire star systems of life before moving on to the next target. They destroyed the Helian colonies in less than 6 hours, Nexus reported, his voice shaking. Billions of beings, gone. The Helians tried to surrender, but the Ravagers do not take prisoners. They harvest everything, Elder Kithara. Every living thing becomes food or slaves for their swarm. The council chamber fell silent. The Villani had known peace for over a millennium. Their society was built on harmony, art, and the cultivation of their beautiful crystal forests. They had no armies, no weapons of war, only small patrol ships used for exploration and rescue missions. Counselor Thane spoke up from the far side of the chamber. How long do we have? Nexus checked his readings again. Based on their current speed and trajectory, the advanced scouts will reach our outer colonies in 72 hours. The main swarm will arrive 6 hours later. A wave of telepathic despair swept through the chamber. Some of the younger counselors suggested immediate evacuation, but Kithara knew it was impossible. The Villani Republic consisted of 12 inhabited worlds and countless smaller settlements. They could never evacuate everyone in time, and even if they could, where would they go? The Ravagers would hunt them across the galaxy. There must be another way, Kithara said, though her voice carried little hope. Nexus suddenly straightened, his crystal skin flashing with an idea. Elder, there might be. During my scouting mission, I intercepted some strange transmissions from a distant system. The signals were unlike anything we have ever heard before. They came from a world the inhabitants call Earth. Several counselors exchanged confused glances. The name meant nothing to them. I studied the transmissions for weeks, Nexus continued. These beings call themselves humans, and they are unlike any species we have encountered. They come from what they describe as a death world, a planet so dangerous that survival requires constant struggle. Their entire culture is built around conflict and war. Thane scoffed. And you think these violent aliens would help us? They sound as dangerous as the Ravagers themselves. But Nexus shook his head vigorously. No, Counselor, you do not understand. I decoded many of their transmissions. These humans do not fight for conquest or resources. They fight to protect others. I found records of them defending weaker species, even at great cost to themselves. They have something they call honor, a concept that drives them to help those who cannot help themselves. Kithara felt a spark of hope ignite in her ancient heart. Tell me more about their military capabilities. Their technology is incredible. Elder, I saw technical specifications for weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Ships that can travel faster than anything we have ever built. But most importantly, I learned about their psychology. These humans have spent their entire evolutionary history fighting predators, natural disasters, and each other. War is not just something they do, it is what they are. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that contacting unknown aliens was too dangerous. Others insisted that the Villani should face their fate with dignity rather than beg for help from strangers. But as the hours passed and reports came in of Ravager scout ships at the edge of their territory, the arguments gradually died down. Finally, Cathara called for silence. "We are a peaceful people," she said. "We have never harmed another living being, never conquered or enslaved. If we must die, we will die with our principles intact. But if there is even the smallest chance that these humans might help us, we not owe it to our children to try." The vote was close, but it passed. The Villani would send a distress signal to Earth. Nexus worked through the night to compose the message. It had to be perfect, translated into the human language they called English. It had to convey both their desperate situation and their peaceful nature. Most importantly, it had to reach the right people, the ones with the power to send help. The final message was simple but heartfelt. Cathara herself recorded it, her voice carrying all the dignity and hope of her dying civilization. "To the warriors of Terra, this is Elder Cathara of the Villani Republic. We are a peaceful people facing extinction. The Ravager swarm approaches our worlds, and we have no means to defend ourselves. We have heard of your strength, your honor, your willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We do not ask this lightly, for we have nothing to offer in return except our gratitude and friendship. But if you can hear this message, if you have any compassion for innocents about to die, please help us. We are located in the Kelthera system. Coordinates attached. We have perhaps 60 hours before the end comes. If you cannot help, we understand. But please know that a peaceful civilization remembered you in its final moments and hoped that somewhere in the galaxy there were still those who fought for justice rather than conquest." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, boosted by every communication relay in Villani space. It raced through the void at the speed of light, carrying with it the hopes of 20 billion souls. As the transmission disappeared into the darkness between stars, Cathara gathered her people for what might be their final council session. Emergency evacuation ships were being prepared for the children and the elderly. Though there were far too few to save everyone, the crystal forests that had taken centuries to grow were being harvested for the last time, their seeds packed away, in the hope that someday, somewhere, new forests might grow. But even as they prepared for the worst, a strange feeling began to spread through the telepathic network that connected all Villani. It was something their peaceful race had rarely experienced in their long history. It was the feeling of hope born from desperation, the belief that help might actually come. Deep space monitoring stations began detecting movement at the edge of their sensor range. The Ravager advance fleet was ahead of schedule. They would arrive in less than 50 hours. As Cathara looked up at the stars through the crystal dome of the council chamber, she wondered if her message had reached its destination. Somewhere out there, in the vast emptiness of space, were there really beings called humans who might care enough about strangers to risk their lives? Were there really warriors from a death world who fought not for glory or conquest, but simply because it was right? The elder closed her eyes and sent a final telepathic prayer into the void, hoping against hope that the Deathworlders would come in time. The alert sirens wailed across Earth's orbital defense platforms as the alien transmission was decoded and analyzed. Admiral Torres stood in the command center of Luna Station, his cybernetic arm interfacing directly with the tactical displays surrounding him. The message from the Villani had reached Earth just 18 hours ago, and the response was already in motion. Dr. Raven rushed into the command center, her tablet displaying the final analysis of the alien distress call. "Admiral, I have confirmed the authenticity of the threat. The Ravager swarm is real, and they are everything the Villani claim them to be." Torres turned his scarred face toward the xenobiologist. His cybernetic arm had been a gift from the Centauri Wars, where he had learned that sometimes the only way to save lives was to take them first. "Give me the details, Doctor." I cross-referenced the Villani data with our own deep space observations from the Andromeda contact zone. The Ravagers wiped out the entire Helix Federation 3 years ago. Over 50 billion beings consumed or enslaved. They are a nomadic species that travels in massive bioships, each one grown rather than built. Their technology is entirely organic, and they reproduce by consuming other life forms. General Pike stepped forward from the strategic planning station. What are their military capabilities? Dr. Raven pulled up holographic displays showing grainy images of Ravager vessels. Each bioship is essentially a living creature the size of a small moon. They attack in swarms, overwhelming their targets through sheer numbers. Their weapons appear to be some form of bioplasma that can melt through most known materials. Most importantly, they show no interest in negotiation or mercy. To them, we are nothing more than resources to be harvested. Torres studied the data. With the cold calculation of a veteran commander, how many ships do they have in this swarm? Conservative estimates suggest at least 200 vessels of various sizes. The Villani Republic consists of 12 inhabited worlds with a combined population of approximately 20 billion. All are completely defenseless. The Admiral turned to General Pike. What do we have available? Pike activated his own set of displays. The 7th Fleet is currently docked at New Geneva for refit and resupply. 12 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 battleships, and the dreadnought Terra's Wrath. All ships are equipped with the new kinetic bombardment systems and plasma shields. The fleet can be ready to depart in 6 hours. That is not enough firepower to face 200. Enemy vessels, Dr. Raven said quietly. Torres smiled grimly. Doctor, you are thinking like a scientist, not a soldier. The Ravagers have never faced humans before. They have spent centuries conquering peaceful civilizations that surrender at the first sign of resistance. They have no idea what a real fight looks like. The Admiral activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels of the 7th Fleet, this is Admiral Torres. We have received a distress call from an alien civilization facing extinction. The enemy is a species known as the Ravager Swarm, and they outnumber us 10 to 1. Any captain who wishes to decline this mission may do so without prejudice. For those who choose to stay, understand that we are not fighting for territory or resources. We are fighting because it is right. The responses came back immediately. Every captain in the fleet volunteered for the mission. Torres had expected nothing less. The men and women under his command were the descendants of warriors who had fought impossible odds throughout human history. They came from a world that had forged them in fire and blood, where survival meant standing up to things that wanted to kill you. Captain Blake, commander of the frigate Defiant, appeared on the main communication screen. Admiral, request permission to take my ship ahead of the main fleet. We can reach Villani space 12 hours before the rest of the convoy and assess the tactical situation. Torres considered the request. Blake was young but experienced, and his ship was fast enough to escape if the situation was hopeless. Permission. Granted, Captain, but you are to observe only. Do not engage the enemy until the main fleet arrives. Understood, sir. As the fleet prepared for departure, Torres reviewed the intelligence reports one more time. The Ravagers were expecting easy prey, another peaceful civilization to harvest without resistance. They had sent the standard intimidation force, enough to terrify the locals but not enough to handle serious opposition. Dr. Raven approached the Admiral with one final piece of information. Sir, I have been studying the Villani transmissions more carefully. Their species appears to be telepathic, and their society is built entirely around nonviolence. They have literally never experienced war. That might actually work in our favor, Torres replied. If they can coordinate with us telepathically, it could give us a significant tactical advantage. General Pike finished loading the tactical data into the fleet computers. Admiral, there is one more thing you should know. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy signatures from the direction of Villani space. The Ravagers may be ahead of schedule. Torres felt the familiar cold feeling in his stomach that came before every major battle. Time was running out, and they were still hours away from being able to help. Signal the fleet. We depart in 4 hours instead of 6. I do not care if the ships are not fully loaded. We work with what we have. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Weapons were loaded, shields were tested, and final briefings were conducted. The new kinetic weapons had never been tested against organic targets, but the science teams believed they would be devastatingly effective. Unlike energy weapons, which could be absorbed or deflected, kinetic projectiles simply punched through whatever was in their way. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, intercepted communications from Ravager vessels revealed their first glimpse of the enemy's psychology. The aliens were discussing the upcoming harvest with the casual indifference of farmers planning to slaughter livestock. They had detected the human distress signal response but dismissed it as irrelevant. After all, what could one unknown species do against the might of the swarm? Captain Blake's frigate was the first to enter hyperspace, racing ahead to scout the battlefield. His ship was equipped with the latest stealth technology, allowing him to observe enemy movements without being detected. If the situation was as bad as they feared, his early warning might be the only thing standing between the Villani and complete annihilation. Torres stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath as the massive dreadnought powered up its hyperdrive engines. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had faced death together many times before. They knew the odds, understood the risks, but they also understood something that the Ravagers did not. Humans did not fight because they enjoyed violence. They fought because someone had to, because the alternative was letting innocents die. It was a concept that peaceful civilizations often struggled to understand and that predatory species like the Ravagers could never comprehend. Admiral, all ships report ready for hyperspace jump, the navigation officer announced. Torres looked out at the stars one last time before they left Earth's solar system behind. Somewhere out there, 20 billion crystalline beings were counting down their final hours, hoping that help would come from the depths of space. The Admiral activated the fleet communication system for the last time before departure. All ships, this is Torres. Today we go to war not for conquest or glory, but because it is who we are. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when someone threatens the innocent while humans are watching. Fleet, prepare for hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Seventh Fleet disappeared into the void, racing against time to reach a world they had never seen to save people they had never met. Behind them, Earth's remaining defenses stood ready to protect humanity's home. Ahead of them lay the unknown, and the first real test of whether the galaxy's newest species truly deserved the title of protector. Captain Blake's frigate Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Lyro system, and what he saw through the view screen made his blood run cold. The beautiful agricultural world that the Villani had called their garden paradise was burning. Massive organic ships, each one pulsing with sickly bioluminescent patterns, hung in orbit like diseased moons. Below them, the crystal forests that had taken centuries to grow were being systematically harvested by enormous mechanical tentacles. Commander Walsh, Blake's tactical officer, ran her hands through her short black hair as she studied the sensor. Readings. Captain, I am reading massive life sign disruptions on the planet's surface. The Ravagers are not just attacking military targets, they are harvesting the entire population. Blake watched in horror as evacuation ships tried to flee the planet's surface, only to be caught by bioplasma nets shot from the orbiting vessels. The crystalline beings inside those ships were probably families, children, elderly Villani who had never hurt anyone in their peaceful lives. Now they were being dragged back to the surface to face whatever horrible fate the Ravagers had planned. For them. Sir, we have orders to wait for the main fleet, Walsh reminded him quietly. Blake stared at the tactical display showing 12 Ravager vessels in orbit, with dozens more scattered throughout the system. His single frigate carried enough firepower to take out maybe 3 of them before being overwhelmed. It would be suicide to attack. It would also be murder to stand by and watch while innocent beings were slaughtered. Orders change, Blake said. Finally, red alert, all hands to battle stations. The Defiant's crew responded with the precise efficiency of trained professionals. They had served together for 3 years, fighting pirates and hostile aliens along the frontier. They trusted their captain's judgment. Even when that judgment seemed to lead straight into hell, Blake activated the ship's communication system. "This is Captain Blake of the Terran frigate Defiant to all Ravager vessels. You are ordered to cease your attack on civilian targets and withdraw from this system immediately." The response came back in a series of clicking, chittering sounds that the ship's computer struggled to translate. When the translation finally appeared on screen, it was simple and chilling. "New prey announces itself. How thoughtful." "Well, we tried diplomacy," Welsh said dryly. Blake smiled grimly. "Lock weapons on the nearest harvester vessel. Target their propulsion systems first. If we can disable their ability to escape, maybe we can save some of the people they have already captured." The Defiant's new kinetic weapon system charged with a low hum that vibrated through the ship's hull. Unlike traditional energy weapons, these guns fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The science teams had theorized that organic armor would be particularly vulnerable to kinetic impact, and Blake was about to test that theory. "Firing," Walsh announced. "3 tungsten rounds streaked across space in less than a second, striking the Ravager harvester amidships. The results were spectacular. The organic hull ruptured like an overripe fruit, spilling bioluminescent fluid into the vacuum. Secondary explosions rippled along the creature's length as vital organs were destroyed by the kinetic impact. Direct hit. Target is dead in space and leaking atmosphere." Blake felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. The other Ravager vessels were already turning toward his position, their organic weapons beginning to glow with deadly bioplasma energy. "Evasive maneuvers. Take us into the asteroid field at the edge of the system. Use the rocks for cover." The Defiant twisted through space like a living thing, its pilot threading the ship between massive asteroids while Ravager bioplasma bolts exploded all around them. The enemy ships were fast, but they lacked the precision and tactical thinking that came from millions of years of predator evolution on a death world. "Captain, I am reading massive energy buildup from the planet's surface," Walsh reported. "The Ravagers are preparing to deploy some kind of planetary bombardment weapon." Blake realized with sick certainty what he was seeing. The Ravagers were not content to simply harvest the Villani. They intended to strip the entire planet bare, consuming every living thing down to the microorganisms in the soil. It was genocide on a scale that defied imagination. New plan. "We need to get down to the surface and evacuate as many civilians as possible." "Sir, that is suicide. The moment we enter atmosphere, every Ravager in the system will converge on our position." Blake looked at the tactical display one more time. 12 enemy vessels against his single frigate. No backup for at least 16 hours, a planet full of innocents about to die. When he spoke, his voice carried the calm certainty of a man who had already made his peace with death. "Commander, how many Villani can we fit in our cargo holds if we strip out everything non-essential?" Walsh ran the calculations quickly. "Maybe 50,000 if we pack them in like refugees. But Captain, without life support equipment, half of them will die during the journey to safety." "Half of 50,000 is 25,000. How many will survive if we do nothing?" Walsh was quiet for a moment. "None, sir." "Then we save who we can." The Defiant dove toward the planet's surface, using the gravity well to accelerate past the slower Ravager vessels. Bioplasma bolts scorched the air around them as they descended through the atmosphere, but Blake's pilot managed to bring them down in one piece near a major Villani city. The scene on the ground was chaos. Crystalline beings ran in every direction as Ravager ground forces rounded them up with energy nets. The aliens' organic technology seemed to be designed specifically for capturing rather than killing, which meant they wanted the Villani alive. For some purpose that Blake preferred not to think about, civilian coordinator Yenna, a tall Villani with silver crystal skin, approached the landed human ship with desperate hope in her large eyes. She had been organizing the evacuation when the Ravagers arrived, and now she found herself face to face with the first human she had ever seen. "You came," she said in accented English. "The transmission reached you." Blake stepped down from his ship's ramp, his combat armor gleaming in the strange light of Lyros Prime's binary suns. We came. How many people do you have ready for evacuation? Nearly 200,000 in the immediate area. But your ship cannot possibly carry them all. We will take who we can. Get the children and elderly aboard first. Anyone who can run needs to head for the northern mountain range. There are caves there where they can hide until help arrives. As the evacuation began, Blake coordinated his ship's defenses with deadly efficiency. The Defiant's point defense systems kept the smaller Ravager ground forces at bay while the civilians boarded. But every few minutes another bioplasma bolt from orbit reminded them that time was running out. Yenna worked alongside the human crew, amazed by their efficiency and determination. These Deathworlders had traveled across the galaxy to save people they had never met, risking their lives without hesitation. It was a concept that her peaceful people were only beginning to understand. "Captain," Walsh called from the ship's communication system. "Multiple Ravager vessels approaching our position. We need to leave now." Blake looked at the stream of Villani still boarding his ship. They had managed to save 47,000 so far, but there were still thousands more waiting. The children were safe, but many adults would be left behind. Yenna seemed to read his thoughts. "Go," she said firmly. "Save those you can. We will hide in the mountains and wait for your friends to arrive." As the Defiant lifted off with its precious cargo of refugees, Blake made one final pass over the city. The sight below would haunt him for the rest of his life. Hundreds of thousands of crystalline beings looking up at his ship with hope and desperation, knowing that their only chance of survival was flying away without them. But Yenna had given him something valuable beyond the lives they had saved. During the evacuation, she had shared crucial intelligence about Ravager weaknesses she had observed during the attack. Their organic ships were vulnerable to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Their ground forces relied on pheromone communication that could be disrupted. Most importantly, they seemed to have no experience fighting opponents who actually fought back. As the Defiant raced away from the dying world with its cargo of survivors, long-range sensors detected movement at the edge of the system. Admiral Torres and the main fleet were finally approaching. Blake's desperate gamble had bought them time and intelligence. But the real battle was about to begin. The Ravager forces were converging on his position, determined to destroy the single ship that had dared to challenge their harvest. 20 bioships against one damaged frigate in an asteroid field. The odds were impossible, but Blake had learned something important during the evacuation. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for what humans did when they had no other choice. The Kelthera system erupted into chaos as Admiral Torres and the 7th Fleet dropped out of hyperspace to find a scene from their worst nightmares. Over 200 Ravager bioships surrounded the beautiful Villani homeworld like a plague of organic locusts. The crystalline cities on the planet's surface were already under bombardment from orbital bioplasma cannons, their ancient spires cracking and falling as centuries of peaceful civilization was systematically destroyed. Torres stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Terra's Wrath, his cybernetic arm interfacing with the tactical displays as he absorbed the scope of the enemy force. His intelligence estimates had been wrong. This was not a standard Ravager harvesting operation. This was their entire swarm, every bioship they possessed concentrated in one system for the complete annihilation of the Villani Republic. Lieutenant Rex rushed to the Admiral's side with the latest communication from Captain Blake's frigate. "Sir, the Defiant is trapped in the asteroid field at coordinates 77 Alpha. Captain Blake reports successful evacuation of 47,000 Villani civilians, but his ship is surrounded and taking heavy damage." Torres studied the tactical display with the cold calculation of a veteran commander. Blake had disobeyed orders by engaging the enemy early, but his actions had saved nearly 50,000 lives and provided crucial intelligence about Ravager capabilities. The young captain deserved a medal and a court-martial in equal measure. "Signal the fleet," Torres commanded. "We are going to spring a trap." For the past 6 hours, the human fleet had been broadcasting false transponder signals, electronic ghosts that made their 12 ships appear to be only 3 light frigates on a Reconnaissance mission. The Ravagers, accustomed to easy victories over defenseless civilizations, had not bothered to investigate more carefully. They believed they faced a token force that could be swatted aside like insects. They were about to learn the difference between humans and their previous victims on the planet below. Elder Cathara huddled in the emergency bunkers beneath the capital city as bioplasma bombardment shook the ground above. The telepathic network that connected all Villani was filled with terror and despair as reports came in from across the planet. The Ravagers were not content with simple conquest. They were systematically destroying every trace of Villani civilization, preparing to strip the world bare of all life, but then something impossible happened. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system. The human fleet had arrived and they were not running away. Torres activated the fleet-wide communication system as the trap was sprung. All ships execute Battle Plan Omega. Let them see what real predators look like. The space around Kelthera suddenly filled with warships as the human fleet's cloaking systems deactivated simultaneously. What the Ravagers had thought was a small scouting force was revealed to be 3 full battle groups attacking from different vectors. 12 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 battleships, and the massive dreadnought appeared as if from nowhere. Their weapons already charging for the first volley. Hive Queen Vazrith, the ancient leader of the Ravager swarm, felt something she had not experienced in centuries: fear. Her organic command vessel pulsed with bioluminescent alarm patterns as her subordinates reported the impossible. The prey species had allies, and those allies had military technology that registered as completely unknown on their sensors. The first exchange of fire lit up the void like a miniature sun. Human kinetic weapons, firing tungsten rounds at relativistic velocities, punched through organic Ravager hulls like paper. The aliens' bioplasma weapons, designed to overwhelm the primitive defenses of peaceful civilizations, splashed harmlessly against human composite armor and energy shields. Captain Morgan commanded the battleship, Iron Will from the center of the formation, her ship's massive railguns cycling through targets with mechanical precision. Each shot destroyed or crippled a Ravager vessel, but there were so many enemies that even devastating losses barely seemed to affect their numbers. Admiral, we are inflicting significant casualties, but they are adapting to our tactics, Morgan reported over the communication network. They are beginning to coordinate their attacks more effectively. Torres watched the battle unfold on his tactical displays with growing concern. The human fleet was winning individual engagements, but the Ravagers had overwhelming numerical superiority. For every bioship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Worse, the enemy was learning from each exchange, adapting their tactics to counter human advantages. Then Lieutenant Rex detected something that made Torres's blood run cold. Admiral, massive energy buildup detected on the largest Ravager vessel. Whatever they are charging, it is unlike anything in our databases. Torres enhanced the sensor image of Hive Queen Vazrith's command ship and saw organic cannons, the size of city blocks, beginning to glow with ominous energy. The intelligence reports suddenly made sense. The Ravagers were not just harvesting the Villani. They were preparing to deploy a planet-killer weapon that would consume Kelthera's entire biosphere. All ships, priority target is the enemy command. Vessel, we cannot allow them to deploy that weapon. But even as the human fleet concentrated its fire on the Hive Queen's ship, Torres realized they were too late. The planet-killer was already charging, and the Ravager defensive screen was too thick to penetrate quickly enough on the planet below. Elder Cathara felt the change in the telepathic network as hope began to replace despair. The human ships were fighting with a ferocity and skill that defied imagination, turning the space around Kelthera into a graveyard of Ravager bioships. But she could also sense something else, a deeper understanding that came from her species' telepathic abilities. The humans were not fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting because they genuinely cared about saving lives, even the lives of complete strangers. It was a concept so alien to the Ravager mentality that it gave the defenders a crucial psychological advantage. Captain Morgan's battleship Iron Will broke through the enemy defensive line just as the planet killer reached full charge. Without hesitation, she ordered her ship to ram the Hive Queen's vessel, sacrificing her own crew to prevent the weapon from firing. The collision tore both ships apart in a spectacular explosion that lit up the entire system, but Hive Queen Vazrith survived the destruction of her command ship, transferring to a smaller bio-vessel at the last moment. As she watched her swarm being systematically destroyed by these impossible Deathworld predators, she made a final desperate decision. If she could not have the planet, no one could. The planet killer weapon had been damaged but not destroyed. With her dying breath, the Hive Queen triggered its activation sequence. A writhing mass of organic destruction began to grow from the wreckage of her ship, reaching out toward Kelthra with tendrils that could consume an entire world in hours. Torres watched the nightmare unfold on his sensors and made the hardest decision of his military career. The only way to stop the planet killer was to detonate Terra's Wrath's fusion cores in direct contact with the organic weapon. It would destroy his ship and everyone aboard, but it might save 20 billion Villani lives. All hands, this is Admiral. Torres, prepare for emergency evacuation. We are going to ram that thing and detonate our reactor cores on impact. The crew of Terra's Wrath responded with the same calm professionalism they had shown throughout the battle. They knew the odds, understood the sacrifice, but they also understood that some things were more important than their own lives. As the massive dreadnought accelerated toward the planet killer weapon, Torres opened a final communication channel to the surviving Villani on the planet below. Elder Cathara, this is Admiral Torres of the Terran Fleet. Tell your people that they are not alone in this galaxy. Tell them that somewhere among the stars there will always be those who fight for justice rather than conquest. The explosion that followed could be seen from 3 star systems away. Terra's Wrath and the planet killer weapon disappeared in a blast of nuclear fire that temporarily outshone Kelthara's sun. When the radiation cleared, both the organic weapon and the human dreadnought were gone, but something impossible had happened. The experimental shielding technology that Earth scientists had been developing had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Most of Terra's Wrath's crew had survived in emergency pods, including Admiral Torres himself. The Ravager swarm, leaderless and demoralized by the loss of their Hive Queen and over half their forces, began to fragment and flee toward unknown space. The survivors would carry with them a new understanding. The galaxy was no longer defenseless. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they fought not for conquest but for something far more dangerous to predators like the Ravagers. They fought for others. 3 months after the Battle of Kelthra, the crystal spires of the Villani capital city rose once again toward the stars, but they were different now. Interwoven with the traditional crystalline architecture were gleaming metal structures of human design, defense platforms and communication arrays that spoke of a civilization that had learned to protect itself. Admiral Torres stood in the newly constructed Joint Command Center, his uniform bearing the scars of the battle that had changed everything. Around him, human and Villani officers worked side by side, their combined technologies creating a defensive network unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans provided the weapons and tactical expertise while the Villani contributed. Their telepathic coordination abilities and deep understanding of galactic politics, Elder Cathara approached the Admiral with the measured grace of her people, but Torres could see the change in her crystalline features. The gentle pacifist who had sent that desperate plea for help 3 months ago had been transformed by witnessing human courage into something harder, more determined. She had become a leader ready to defend her people rather than simply hoping for the best. Admiral, we have received 17 more requests for assistance in the past week, she reported. The Althorian Republic is facing raiders from the Void Sector. The Crystalline Confederacy reports unknown ships massing at their borders. Even the proud Xanthari Empire has quietly inquired about the possibility of a mutual defense treaty. Torres studied the holographic display showing the various crisis points across their local galactic region. News of the human victory over The Ravager swarm had spread faster than anyone had anticipated, carried by refugee ships and long-range communication networks. The story had grown in the telling, but the essential truth remained. Humanity had traveled across the galaxy to save strangers, defeating an enemy that had terrorized civilized space for generations. Captain Reeves, Torres's newly appointed successor, as fleet commander, emerged from the tactical planning session with a grim expression. "Sir, we have a problem. Earth Command is concerned about our expanding commitments. We simply do not have enough ships to respond to every crisis in this sector." It was the question that had been haunting Torres since the first requests for help began arriving. Humanity had never intended to become the galaxy's police force. They had responded to the Villani crisis because it was right, because innocent people were dying and they had the power to help. But success had created its own problems. Dr. Raven entered the command center with her latest intelligence analysis. "Admiral, I have been studying the political implications of our intervention here. The balance of power in this region has shifted dramatically. Species that were previously considered prey by aggressive neighbors now see humans as potential protectors. But that also means every predatory civilization in the galaxy now sees us as a threat." Torres nodded grimly. "How many hostile species are we tracking?" "At least 12 that we know of." The Ravagers were not the only aggressive civilization in this region. The Devour clans, the Machine Collective, the Hive Worlds, they are all watching to see what we do next. Elder Cathara spoke up from her position at the diplomatic station. "Admiral, my people have been in contact with representatives from over 40 peaceful civilizations. They are all asking the same question. Will humanity help them if they are threatened?" The weight of 20 billion lives had been heavy enough. The weight of hundreds of billions was almost crushing. Torres had signed up to defend Earth and its colonies, not to become the protector of an entire galactic region. But the alternative was abandoning innocent species to predators like the Ravagers. "Captain Reeves, what is the status of our new ship construction?" Reeves pulled up the latest reports from Earth's orbital shipyards. "Production has increased by 300% since the Battle of Kelthera. The new Villani Alliance has provided us with advanced crystal technology that makes our ships faster and more efficient. We will have 8 new destroyers operational within 6 months." Ambassador Chin, Earth's newly appointed diplomatic representative to the region, approached with news from the outer colonies. "Admiral, I have just received word from the Frontier Council. They are volunteering to provide crews for the new ships. It seems that every human settlement wants to contribute to what they are calling the Protector Fleet." Torres felt a mixture of pride and concern at the news. Humanity's response to the crisis had been everything he could have hoped for, but he worried about the long-term implications. Earth was a single world with limited resources. How long could they sustain a military commitment that spanned multiple star systems? The answer came from an unexpected source. Coordinator Yenna, the Villani civilian who had helped with the evacuation on Lyros Prime, entered the command center with a proposal that would change everything. "Admiral Torres, Elder Cathara, I have been working with representatives from the species we have helped over the past 3 months. We would like to propose something that has never been tried before in galactic history." She activated a holographic display showing a complex organizational chart, a true defensive alliance not based on conquest or tribute, but on mutual protection and shared resources. The Villani provide crystal technology and telepathic coordination. The Althorians contribute their advanced sensor networks. The Zenthari offer their manufacturing capabilities. Humanity provides military leadership and combat expertise. Torres studied the proposal with growing amazement. It was ambitious beyond anything humanity had attempted, a voluntary alliance of peaceful species, united by their shared need for protection and their common respect for human military capabilities. "The logistics alone would be staggering, Captain," Reeves pointed out. "Coordinating fleets from dozens of different species, each with their own technology and tactics." Elder Kithara's crystalline features pulsed with excitement. "That is where our telepathic abilities become crucial. We can provide instant communication across any distance, allowing for coordination that was previously impossible. Dr. Raven was already running calculations on her tablet. The combined industrial capacity of all these civilizations would dwarf anything Earth could produce alone. We could build ships faster than any single species in galactic history. But Torres remained cautious. What about command structure? Who makes the decisions when crisis strikes? Ambassador Chun smiled. That is the most elegant part of the proposal. Humanity retains operational command of all military assets, but strategic decisions are made by a council of all member species. No one civilization dominates the alliance. As the discussions continued, reports began coming in from across the region. The first joint patrol missions were already showing results. Pirates and raiders who had terrorized shipping lanes for decades were fleeing rather than face combined human and alien fleets. The mere existence of the alliance was deterring aggression without a shot being fired. But the most important news came from the deep space monitoring stations. Hive Prince Skarn, the last surviving Ravager commander, had been detected broadcasting on all frequencies throughout his former territory. His message was simple but profound. To all who would prey upon the weak, know this. The galaxy has changed. The Deathworlders have come, and they do not fight for conquest or resources. They fight for others, which makes them far more dangerous than any swarm. Beware the humans, for they have made the protection of innocence their cause, and there is no force in the universe more terrifying than warriors who fight not for themselves, but for justice. Torres read the translation with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The Ravagers understood what they were facing, but did the humans themselves understand what they had become? The final scene played out 6 months later as Torres stood on the observation deck of the new Joint Command Station orbiting Calthera. Below him, human and Villani ships patrolled together, their crews learning from each other, sharing techniques and technologies that made both species stronger. In the distance, construction teams were building the first permanent defense platforms, a network of orbital fortifications that would protect not just the Villani homeworld, but serve as a symbol of what could be achieved when peaceful civilizations stood together. Captain Reeves approached with the latest reports from Earth. Admiral, the Colonial Council has approved the expansion. We will have 50 new ships operational within 2 years, all crewed by volunteers from across human space. Torres nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. Deep space. Sensors were detecting movement at the edge of known space. Energy signatures that suggested new threats approaching civilized systems. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had protected only a tiny fraction of it, but they had made a start. They had proven that predators like the Ravagers could be defeated, that peaceful civilizations could defend themselves when they stood together. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that somewhere in the dark vastness of space, there were still those who fought for justice rather than conquest. The Deathworlders had kept their promise. Now the galaxy would never be the same.